Hello. Oh, we're live. Sorry, my computer didn't show we're live. Hello and welcome. My name is Beth Shakura-Hamon from ThriveTherapies.com. Today, I'm filling in for Anaya on Angel Heart Radio, and I have a wonderful guest here today, Phillip Duxfield from Rogue Therapies.com, and we're going to be talking about what is a healthy partner and what is it that you can control or not control in that way. So it's just bringing awareness to what is that and how can you see where you're at with that and whether you want to change anything. So yeah, it's going to be a great show. And just before I introduce Phillip, I want to do the housekeeping. So here at Angel Heart Radio, we certainly are not to replace any legal or medical advice for anyone. We certainly want you to do that. If you have any concerns, you go to your doctor or any legal advice. So these are just the views of the hosts today. So welcome, Phillip, today. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for, I'm excited to be on the show with you today. It's the first time that we've been on together. So it's a really big topic, isn't it? Being a partner in a relationship.
Yeah. And as I was saying yesterday when we were discussing the topic, it's obviously it'd be very topical with the year that everybody's had and the year that people are still having COVID-wise, being locked up and sometimes too close quarters, even with very well-established or very, what we use the term loosely, healthy relationships up until this point. We may be touching on some difficult subject matter, but we don't want to shy away from anything. We want to cross these boundaries and open up these boxes cautiously and patiently and with grace. And we hope that we can aid people, not make them feel too uncomfortable, and just see if we can help and see if we can shine some light on some potentially very dark areas here.
Yes, definitely. Relationships are just, they're a constant thing to work at. And it is about self-awareness and what we are doing in a relationship ourselves, looking at our own actions and, of course, the actions of the other person. But it comes back, we're the only one that can change things for ourselves in that way. So it's just being mindful and seeing, understanding yourself is a major factor in this, I would say. So in your work, Phillip, you work a lot with men as well. And this is for men and for women, but you certainly work quite a bit with men. And women and men think differently in different ways, don't we? It's not always the easy road.
Yes. Often we have different priorities. Often when we see a problem, we want to attack it in a different way. Lots of differences, but it probably is worth pointing out at this point that our differences are what make us great partnerships. A great partnership isn't something that is a carbon copy of you. A great partnership is that balance of you. And of course, balance has to be opposite in probably more than one way.
Yes.
But yeah. Naturally, that is going to lead to conflict at some point.
Yeah, exactly. Because we do see things differently. But I guess if we can appreciate the differences, that's one step towards being a good partner, appreciating the other person for the differences in that way and coming together to try and, it's not a compromise, but it's that understanding, having understanding and empathy, I guess, is one thing. There's many qualities that make a good partner, honesty, integrity, openness is a big one. Like being open and that vulnerability can be difficult for men and for women. I know particularly men have that issue. Do you find that a large portion? Do men talk about that at all when they come to you?
This has been a very, very defining, shaping factor of my practice on the whole, is because men don't talk. And straight away, I could see, and this is when I was just starting out, 12 years ago in therapy, straight away I could see that the absolute worst way to get a guy to talk about his feelings is to put him in a counseling room, put a box of tissues next to him and say, open up. It's basically, will achieve the opposite, right? So straight away I was like, cool, let's go and shoot some pool. Let's go for a walk. Let's go fishing.
Yeah.
And then you're far more likely to get a man to talk. Maybe
Yes.
not his feelings, but at least you'll get his lips flapping, right? It's a start.
Yes, it is. It's all how you approach things, I guess, with men in that way, because men are sensitive. I mean, often women can see them as insensitive, but it tends, what my observation is, it's where they just shut down. They can't deal with certain things, so they shut off. It's not that they're not feeling or not sensitive in
Yeah.
that way.
And
So that we can misread.
yeah, I think these days, especially, men are becoming more sensitive than ever. Sorry, guys, I'm not trying to throw you under the bus here. But it's just, and the world is slowly permeating our tough exterior and say, actually, you've got to start feeling these emotions at some point or another. So whether we want to or not, that influence is starting to shape the culture of men, particularly because the world is trying to steer men away from the traditional masculine imagery, which for so long has been the standard that men expect ourselves to live up to. So for better or worse, the world is changing men. So I guess all we have to do now is try to understand how we can live in that world, especially men. We're trying to figure out how to live in this world. We're trying to figure out how we can maintain our ego as men, but not step into what the world now refers to as toxic masculinity. And this is what we're still figuring out daily. And as I say, we're becoming more sensitive and we're getting stuff figured out, but it's a long and slow process.
Yes, and I guess on one level, men, you could say spiritually, if you believe in this, we've all chosen to be here at this time, and men now have chosen to be on this road of this change, and it's difficult for women and men. It's been difficult for women for a long time, but men are now starting to feel that difficulty, and unfortunately some reacting well, some others not at all, and very badly. But it's part of the change of consciousness. So it is. It's slow though. Change is unfortunately slow in some ways and not in others.
Yeah. And I'm glad you raised that, because I think spirituality is it is a hole that, if it is not addressed, is going to cause massive issues. It's something that we can't, in my humble opinion, can't live in ignorance of. So whether you want to embrace it or not, it's going to need to be addressed at some point.
Yeah, it's happening anyway. It's whether you're more aware and conscious of what's going on or not. And that's for women and men in whatever's happening, and women's roles as well, what their responsibility is also. So we're all responsible as partners it's a partnership, no matter whether, even if it's a romantic partnership or not, there's always a partnership, isn't it? We were talking earlier, relationships are the basis of the world, the humanity, and they make up this world. So it's a very powerful subject. So, getting on with our partners or whoever can make life a whole lot nicer, more harmonious, and that's what we're all wanting.
Yeah, I believe that it's the basis of the all life. We're put on here so that we can understand and experience and appreciate relationships. That to me is the meaning of life in a nutshell. But once you're put into that, off you go and understand relationships. It's not exactly 1 + 1, right?
No, I mean, because we're such human beings are such complex, emotionally complex beings. We are, and you could go on and on and on trying to understand the complexities, but that would take too long. Actually, you probably never get to the bottom of it. So you have to try and focus on what you can change and focus on the positives, because we all know where you focus, your energy goes. So it's not ignoring what isn't right, but it's trying to bring out the more positive in yourself and with your partner, whoever that may be. Might not be women as well, you know, in different partnerships. Yeah, and as with men, same-sex partnerships. So it's any partnership in that way. So yes, so I, you know, I've learned a lot over the years myself, like I'm sure you have as well, what mistakes we make and how you can do it differently. I guess it's whether you learn from that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, when we can, yeah.
yeah. Do you find in your work that people will take responsibility for things, their actions or non-actions?
I would say generally people are predisposed not to. I think, I don't know whether it's just a result of the world we live in and societal pressures, but by default, I think we are just automatically saying who's to blame.
Yes.
We don't naturally just go, what did I do wrong? How did I contribute? And it's that, especially when you're going through something like a marriage separation, that really, really uncomfortable point, which has to happen at some point for you to get back to wholeness is, okay, what did I do wrong? How did I contribute to the marriage falling apart? Irregardless of what my partner did to me. And they may have been an awful, awful, awful partner. And you might have done this much to contribute to that marriage falling apart. But yeah, are we able to embrace any failings in ourselves?
Yeah, we're there. We put ourselves there. So yeah, it is taking some responsibility for that. And it energetically that can ease up a lot of anger and resentment and what happens, because when anger just grows and grows between people, you know, the results can be, yeah, all sorts of things that you don't want to go near. Yeah, on various levels, you know, people getting revenge and, you know, all sorts of things and yeah, with families and so forth. So yes, it's being honest with oneself and the other partner. That, I mean, that's a huge thing to, you know, as a good partner, what makes a good partner in any sort of relationship.
So it's
Self-honest.
been when we were talking about the subject material yesterday, and we were coming back to kind of like a broad subject of in the last year, we've had a lot of relationships have been locked up in close quarters, and unfortunately, we've seen a rise in things like domestic violence, and we started to touch on the subject of why, because of course that's what we want to know. We don't want to know why these things are happening. We want to know why is my partner becoming more aggressive. We want to know, we want some, I don't know, we want justifications, we want escapes, we want understanding, we want to know what we can prevent. And in your experience when you've been through difficult times with your partners, have you noticed anything about like what you learned about what caused your partner to become more stressed, or what things he or she was missing out on?
Oh, sorry, in my own experience. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I learned what my part was, you know, the lack of value I had in myself and probably not speaking up enough. And that's a big thing, boundaries. I think being a good partner, I think you need to have boundaries, understand and have probably, they're not good to create better boundaries because that then makes them respect you more. And you need to you need to have respect in a good partnership. So yes, I learned a number, it's just a couple of different things I learned, and not putting yourself last so much. It's okay to compromise, but when you put yourself last all the time, again, you devalue yourself and it takes you down that downward spiral, and it's not good. And then when you don't value yourself, the other person doesn't value you.
What an excellent point. Yeah, great.
And I see that quite a lot. It can happen with men. I certainly see it with women, but it certainly can happen with men as well. And realizing it's a pattern you can get locked into if you don't pull yourself out of that and start to see yourself differently. and, can lead to depression, anxiety, all those sorts of things. So, yeah, that's certainly something I learned.
Did you find any good, easy and repeatable ways to just help to set those boundaries?
Well, once you understand that, I understood that I didn't want to do that again, I spoke up, even though it may have been confronting. It's like standing up for yourself was the thing that you had to do, and speak up what you really felt. That was a big thing to change. And actually, not what I learned was not be afraid of, we all have an Achilles heel in our, what our greatest fear is, could be something taken away and so forth. It could be money, it could be your children, which is a big thing. Children was one of mine. And if you know that you'll bow to that, someone dominating you or controlling you with that fear that you have, once you can see that and let go of that fear, that dramatically changed a relationship with an ex. I stopped being scared of someone. Yeah. I mean, that's not always easy for women to be able to do that, but in my circumstance, it wasn't. Some women are in very difficult relationships and they fear for their actual safety, but
Yeah.
that was my experience. So recognizing that earlier on, see, a lot of these things, if you recognize them early on, that the relationship isn't exactly what you want, and look at yourself, I feel you can adjust a lot easier before it escalates.
Yeah, and from the male perspective, if I can encourage anybody listening who may be considering doing that, I'd say that it's probably a lot easier than you think to get these points communicated to a male partner. But the trick is always try to, I use the word demystify it, because when women are talking to women, they tend to use emotional language, which makes sense to them, but men are very logical creatures. So we need an issue to be boiled down to its most basic point. So I feel like I'm undervalued. For example, when you said this about the situation to me on this day, it made me feel like this. And a lot of the time you'll see this veil come away from the man, like, oh, what? That's how, and we just have no idea because we're just not living in an emotional realm. And sometimes sometimes we're so involved in our own, whatever it is, we might be involved in our own suffering, anguish, trauma. It might just be something silly that's just pursuing our mind and keeping us busy. We may be unaware of the significant emotional effects of our seemingly insignificant behaviors.
Yes.
But most guys I talk to want to know, because we don't want to feel like we're disrespecting our partners and making them feel bad and lowering their self-esteem.
Yes, that's right. Exactly. It's interesting you touch on when men can be in their own space and women are trying to get through to them. I totally agree with what you're saying there. I always laugh that because often men won't say, I just need space, I'm going through something. I always think if we had like a fridge magnet to say, I'm in my cave, it'll be okay. And then you can say, I'm out of my cave or I'm in my cave. I think women would understand that a little bit more than what happens now, unfortunately. And it's all about the communication, isn't it? How we go about it.
And there's extra little tips about how to survive long-term relationships. There was a wonderful analogy by a speaker called Mark Gungor. That's Gungor. And he said that male brains and female brains, obviously they're very different. But one of the ways in which a male goes through his daily self-care is he'll go to work, he'll come home, he'll sit in front of the TV and go into what he called his nothing box. Now, until he'd gone into his nothing box for 30 to 60 minutes, he couldn't think about anything else. Now, the way in which the females generally process or do their self-care is they don't have a nothing box, they have an everything box. So when the partner comes home, they want to process their day by talking about it all at the same time. And if the man, if he doesn't get a chance to go into his nothing box, he actually can't process the emotional processing that's going on from the female.
Yeah.
So healthy functioning was, he comes home, he goes into his nothing box for 30 to 60 minutes, and he's literally thinking about nothing, but he's just coming back to baseline. Once he's done that, then he's absolutely ready to then help her process her day with the way she does it. But it needs to happen exactly in that order.
Yes. Yeah, well, that's a really important point. Yeah, because a lot of women wouldn't possibly realize. A lot may, but they may think it's something against them, but it's not. It's just how males have to do it. So giving someone that time. I guess some guys only might get a drive home. They're driving home in that state. I don't know whether that counts. Do you think that counts? I don't know. Sorry.
If traffic's bad, it doesn't count.
Fair enough. Like going to the gym, would that count? Some sort of release, or they have to just sit, do you think?
They can do, but the thing is, it has to be daily, and it generally has to happen at the end of the day, which for most guys is the end of the workday, when they come home and start their relaxed time.
Yes. Okay. And you've got possibly children, wanting to talk and wanting this, wanting that. It's like walking into which women have to deal with anyway. That's hard enough. But yes, I can understand. Yes.
Yeah. And mum's probably got a list of things that she has to get sorted, which she needs his help to do. And so she's just waiting for him to get home, because she needs, I need to answer this, I need to help this, can you pack this, I need to plan the stuff, I'm trying to organize my life. And
and the rest of the family, yes, it's you go, why were we made this way? So different in this way, that how we get on. I guess obviously it's a challenge of our beings to work out how to do this with someone that's
we're just
very opposite.
learning how to be gracious with each other, aren't we?
Definitely. Yes. So that is a challenge. Definitely. I just have to apologize. I haven't got the chat up, but both myself and Phillip will get back to you. Anyone who's got questions on the Angel Heart Radio page, we will get back to you later. So yes, it is fascinating, because a lot of women like just go on their partner but don't know it's a general thing with men. Like it's great to hear it from other men. This is not about just you. This is just general what men do. Make themselves feel better. And
guys don't know how to say to their partner, this is what I need. We'll just grin and bear it until perhaps we're overwhelmed, and then we'll exhibit a bad behavior, which obviously is not okay. It's on the guy to figure out his own stuff, but this is the part we're terrible at on average.
Yes, well, that's one thing. In being a good partner, it's a lot of women will say he just hasn't grown up, and a lot of that can be about not avoiding dealing with a lot of stuff, like from the past, and it's still acting out in a way that is inappropriate, because it hasn't dealt with the old stuff. And part of that, women see possibly that shutting down and trying to not communicating is that they haven't grown up, but it's not that. It's just what you were talking about. It's that you need to wind down and process your own stuff for a while.
Another thing I see happen in relationships, particularly when women are finding that their men are not processing or shutting down. Women and men handle episodes of stress differently. From wherever you decide it came from, there is a phenomenon with men where it makes us very good soldiers, where if we're put in a position of stress, our emotions will just shut off and we just become quite irrational, and this allows us to act clearly. It doesn't mean that we don't feel. What happens is all of that trauma gets stored, and we then need to or avoid processing it when we're then safe. Women are actually able to feel emotions at the time, and they don't shut off at all. They just process stuff, and this is probably a far more healthy way to do things. But so what happens then is a woman will be in a fight with a man, and it'll be like, why can't you just tell me how I'm feeling? But as soon as that adrenaline kicks in, as soon as the stress response or fight or flight is kicked in, we've already shut down. So in that, you're almost asking us to do something that biologically we just can't do anymore.
Mm.
So to get us to process emotions, we first have to be outside of the stress. And again, it's difficult when you're in a process, you've got something that's causing conflict with your partner. And so the second you're talking about it, it almost creates stress. So there's a bit of a balancing act with even processing these things, hey. But I
Yes.
hope to get some of the women just starting to understand why it's difficult for men to talk about their feelings when the fight's happening. Sometimes the best thing is just to walk away, give it even 2 or 3 hours, sit down with a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, or a glass of wine and say, are you ready to talk about it?
Mm. Yes, you're triggering a memory. A partner I was with, he just refused to talk, wouldn't talk about. I couldn't get anything out of him. Just look at me, and that's the worst thing you can do to a woman is just not talk and refuse to talk. He could say, "Look, I'll talk to you later," but not even that. It was a total shutting down and shutting off. Yes, I don't know. I'm sure other women may have experienced that sort of thing. If you can just communicate something that you can't deal with the situation right now, would be good. um,
Yeah, good advice from
yeah,
Andy out there. Yeah.
yeah, just something. Yeah, and it just shows you how so different we are. But I mean, there's still common things that create a good make a good partner in that way. I mean, we've got our differences and we have to learn how to deal. I mean, communication is a massive part of it. But my list. I mean, there's the affection. I mean, you've got to know your say with affection or understanding your partner's love language and how they express love is a massive thing, and not everyone may know that clearly about their partner. Never really talked about it. Like, what's your love language? How do you express it, and how do you like to receive it? We just assume, I guess, don't we?
Yeah. And doesn't it happen so often where if your partner doesn't speak your love language, you think they're not, or you feel they're not doing anything for you or contributing to the relationship? And when you talk to them about it, they may say, what do you mean? I do this for you, I do that for you, I do that for you. And so that's their love language, which you may not have even been aware of.
Yes, yes. It can feel yeah, if you're a toucher person, you love hugs and touching, and they're a doer
Mm,
for you, it's like, well, you feel very lacking in any nourishment, but they're
yeah.
thinking that they're doing all this for you. And then have you thought about how they want to receive? Often we don't may not think about how we like to receive love from someone in that way. Um, yeah, you really need to sit down and think about this and get very clear.
Yeah. And again, demystify it, i.e., when you say to your husband, wow, you haven't hugged me in 3 days. And because physical touch is my love language, it makes me feel like you don't even like me anymore.
Yeah.
Again, your husband might go, what? I picked you up from work, I dropped you home, and I cooked you dinner. And
Yes.
she might be like, yeah, well, I need a hug. Sorry, it's just the way it is,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is fair. If you need a hug, just got to be clear about it and say, I need a hug. Or just
Yeah.
take the initiative and say, I need a hug and it's happening right now. Deal with
Yeah.
it.
And a hug and just a hug, um, without, that's a big thing for women is, being touched and hugged without extras, without thinking
Yeah,
that it has to lead to more. That is a huge thing for women, that unconditional love. And I think it's actually good for men to experience that without, we need just love. And
absolutely.
that's
Yeah,
it.
wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah. Concentrating on the love aspect will hold a partnership together. All aspects are important, obviously, but as time goes, things change in people's bodies. Your body, you're not going to be as active physically down the track as you may at a younger age. So that's the glue that holds everything together. So, both working on that, just that love aspect, and that involves all these other things, appreciation and gratitude and forgiveness. That's a big one. Um, you know, I mean, that's a really big one, because we're all here learning about unconditional love,
Mm.
every one of us, and we're not brought up in that way.
Doesn't happen without forgiveness. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've had experiences with that yourself.
Well, that's for sure.
I certainly have, yeah.
Before we move on from love languages, I should just clarify, in case anybody doesn't know, that there is one love language between men and women primarily that never changes, which is for a woman to bond with another person, man or woman. She'll generally need to share some feelings. But for a man to bond with another man or woman, they need to share an activity. So if you want to reconnect with your male partner, or if you want to increase your connection, in all levels, not just friendship, but intimate connection, find something you can do together, anything at all. And this even goes as far as sharing a movie that he likes. It doesn't have to be fishing or playing pool or bowling or, anything at all.
Yes, yeah. And that just made me think of this. One other thing was often going through challenging times brings people together. I mean, it can tear them apart, but it can solidify and really bond partners together even more through a challenge and many challenges. Yeah.
It's one of those make or break, isn't it?
Sorry?
It's one of those make or breaks.
Yes. Yeah. Not that you want difficult challenges all the time, but it certainly shows the level of connection that you do have working through something like that. And, I don't think there'd be any partnership or marriage or whatever where that isn't tested somewhere. Or,
yeah.
I think in my experience, I don't know about in yours.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's an important one with the doing something together that you like, you share. Yeah. And doing it.
Any woman who wouldn't want to do date night more regularly. This comes up all the time. And what a great opportunity to both meet each other's needs.
Yes. And especially when you have children, because you lose that sense of being a person. You're just a mum or a dad, and you need to keep that sense of self of you're a person. You're an individual. You've just happened to have children as well. So yeah, keeping that together is really, or keeping it regular as much as you can. Doesn't have to be much. It's just something that you can spend time with each other and remember how to talk to each other, or do something, as you say, something fun together. There's a lot of fun, and humor I feel is a big thing, connector and bond with each other. Because it's easy, particularly now, to, we're all needing more joy in our lives, more fun. Yeah, because there's so much of the other out there. We need, like, focusing on that, bringing that joy, because that raises your vibration so much. And you see things differently when you can bring that into your relationship and with each other. Laugh with each other. That's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Oh, when it's a possibility, it is one of the best things in a relationship, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, relationships are based on so many different things, and why people get together. And it's fascinating, all the differences there can be. And sometimes it's not love even, it's just, I don't know, it's what you do. There's so many different reasons. When you think that someone's getting together for love, it's not always there, or it's only what they can feel at the time. It's their understanding of what love is. Let's put it that way.
So some other points that I was hoping we could cover this morning, to Beth, if I may. There are lots of experts who have different theories on stages of relationships that different relationships must progress past to get that, real long-term place where you're just going to figure it out and be together forever. So a few things that I'd like to say about stages of relationships is, number one, is a thing that balanced us now frustrates us. So you're often attracted to a person. I think this is Mark Gungor as well. I don't want to take credit for his very, very good work. the thing that often attracts you to a person will be that balance. So often in the attraction phase, you'll find somebody who is a little more stay at home if you're going out, or a little more going out if you're a bit stay at home. They'll be a little more of a spender and you'll be a bit more of a saver. And on some level, you'll be like, wow, this is a great match for me. Fast forward to 2 years or so into the marriage, and all of a sudden you're frustrated because that person who got you out of the house is now still wanting to get you out of the house. And you're like, oh, I want to stay at home. And I'm just that kind of person. Or, vice versa, that your partner is a real spender. And you'll be like, can't we just get on top of our savings account for once? And suddenly it's a massive issue.
Mm.
And it's difficult. It's difficult for a lot of couples to get past this point because it's the very thing that makes you a good pair, despite the fact that they may be a polar opposite to you. And of course, I think getting past this, and I'd love to know your thoughts on the subject too, Beth, is just allowing that person to change you a bit, but also knowing your partner is changing a bit as well, so that you can actually balance each other out. It's not being stubborn about who you are. What do you think?
Yeah, totally. I've seen that many times. It's on a bigger picture, you could say spiritually, a holistic picture. You're actually dealing with the same issue when one extreme to the other, and it's about trying to learn from each other and meet in the middle. You're both learning about the same issue, but from different directions. So yeah, it's certainly about trying to balance it and not make the other right or wrong. It's how can we make this actually work and not, just get crazy at each other, and can tear people apart. Depending, I've seen it so many times. Yeah, it's fascinating to watch, and people can be shocked when they're realizing they're working on it as it's the same issue, but you're coming at it from different directions, and they've got something to learn as well. They're trying, looking at making the other person wrong, and in the big picture, they're actually not.
Yes. Yeah. So the next stage of relationship development that I see come up a lot is ordered processing of trauma. So despite the fact that women are able to feel emotions when they're going through things, genuine trauma is often buried, as happens in both sexes, to be dealt with at a later stage. And this is a funny thing that happens, and I get a lot of guys in relationship therapy where a relationship is going really, really well, and all of a sudden, his partner starts going through some really, really deep stuff, and there's tears and there's panic, and it can be really confusing to him because he's like, everything was going so well. What did I do wrong? But the opposite can actually be true because she's suddenly feeling so safe with her partner. She's now ready to process this trauma.
Yep.
So trauma happens in stages, right? So once the female in the relationship has processed her trauma, guaranteed, that's when the man will then process his trauma. And if the partners aren't really aware of this, and because you could be 7-8 years into a marriage by this point, and suddenly he starts going through some stuff. He won't know what's going on. She won't know what's going on. It's just all of a sudden everything's a drama and life is falling apart. And why do I feel the sudden, essentially post-traumatic stress, So just being aware of what's happening may just be able to, because he needs help. If he's not processing it, he needs help. He needs professional help. He needs a good mate he can talk through. Yeah, it could be buried from a long, long time ago. We could be talking about childhood trauma that is all of a sudden in his 40s or 50s, suddenly rearing its head.
Yeah.
So worth being aware of. Yeah.
Definitely. Totally agree. Yeah, a lot of people, I've had women and men sort of come in their 60s and 70s and they've not processed trauma. They've got, oh, that happened all that long ago. And I said, well, it's still sitting there. You haven't dealt with it. So it can come up at any time. It doesn't have to come up early. But yes, understanding, as you say, women will feel safer to be out, they're in a safe space to process. And then, and men need that space as well. They need to feel safe that they're not going to be judged or whatever for feeling what they're feeling. So yeah, it can be a challenging time, but a really good, again, bonding time, I would think, to support each other at different times when it's happening. So again, understanding how it would feel for you, you've always go, how would I feel? That was me. Like in anything really in life, it's like having empathy makes a huge difference. And obviously that brings the compassion out, which we all the world is needing so much of. So
Indeed.
having compassion in your relationship for yourself and your partner is a big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's interesting.
So number 3.
Yeah, good.
Can happen at any time in the relationship. It's not necessarily more of a stage, but something I see happen on both sides, men and women, is how has my style of communication changed? In the early stages of a relationship, where you're very much in the romantic phase, your style of communication will be very complimentary, very flattering. You tend to be very aware but dismissive of anything about your partner that may not match up to your standard. It's like, oh no, it's fine. I'm sure he'll change, or I'm sure she'll get over it. And then, of course, when you become comfortable with a person, it's very easy, if you're not paying attention to it, for your style of communication to suddenly become critical. You did that wrong. You're not paying attention. You. And there's a lot to be said for the old-fashioned change your statements to I feel, or I'm experiencing, or did you know when you do this, it makes me feel like this. And there's a lot to be said by just staying complimentary as well. People are very, very suggestible these days. I'm sure you've noticed this, where if you tell a person they're no good, they'll end up no good. But if you tell a person they're great, they're meant for more, they're going to do amazing things, they will. People do what they're told, for better or for worse. So it's not necessarily something you may be doing wrong, but something to watch out for is, how is your style of criticism shaping and molding your partner? Because to a certain extent, you're creating the person they're going to be with the words that you say.
Oh, totally agree. That's, it's very deep, and particularly, when you've got for children, that's ingrained. I was brought up in criticism, and so I know it can be like that psychological thing eats away at people, and it can be worse. Both are bad. Physical, violence, both. You just don't see what the eroding of someone being constantly criticized, what it does to a person psychologically over time, and changing that. So yeah, when you're criticizing your partner, it can feel, it's very contracting to that person. You feel contracted down, and you've got to understand you wouldn't be doing that to them if you're not doing it to yourself. So you've got to understand, why am I projecting this? Look at yourself. Why am I criticizing this person? There's an unhappiness within yourself. Look, we all do things that can annoy, but it can be very much how if there's something you need to say, as you've said, you can say it in a way that's not going to undermine someone. You can still,
absolutely, yeah,
change it somehow.
Yeah, it's not being told not to speak your mind. It's not being told not to have an opinion. It's just how these things are communicated, which is of the utmost importance, right?
Yeah, exactly. We do tend to take on untruths. We take them, we believe the negative about ourselves all the time. That's human nature more, than anything. So it's breaking out of that old way of thinking, to first be aware of how much you're hearing. And I think there's a big, like Louise Hay, it's like, what are you hearing? How many people's hearing's been affected by constant criticism, or they shut down? They just don't want to hear. And you can understand that. It can be, people just shut their hearts down when they're being criticized all the time in a particular way. Yeah.
All right. So the next one, if I may touch on it briefly, is sex life. So a lot of things that women don't know when it comes to men is a man's libido is directly tied to his ego. So often a man...
I think women have worked that one out.
I hope so.
I see
this present in relationships where guys will be going through something, and a lot of the time that the partner just won't really be consciously aware of how destructive to the ego this thing has been to the man. They may just be a passing comment by a friend, or an issue at work, or maybe something that's ongoing and has created a situation where he doesn't know how to get out of it. And it may be tied to something very deep to his self-esteem that probably he isn't aware of. But if his ego takes a hit, that's it. The libido will take a hit as well. And I see often the female, their first instinct is to feel like he's not attracted to me anymore. They'll always see a behavior and say, what did I do wrong? What am I doing wrong? And in my experience, 9 times out of 10, it's actually got nothing to do with her. It's all to do with him. He is just feeling his ego is under massive attack, even though it may not seem that way on the surface. And in every case, if we've been able to address the issue, build his ego back up again, then the libido follows suit.
Yes. Yes. Understanding men's ego in that way, and how, I mean, for women, lots of things can affect, how they feel of their sex drive and so forth, and their response to their partners and so forth. I guess, for women, it's understanding how much that affects men as well, but they'll act it out.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same, but not to take it so personally. Yeah. But it's getting them to open up what that may be. I guess that would be the challenge. For men to talk about it, because when they don't talk, women naturally assume it's got to be them.
Yes, yeah, and again, most of the time it's not. Yeah, no fucking. Yeah.
And I guess that's all. All anyone can do is just try and work through with the communication again. But that's an individual thing. I mean, some men may obviously open up about it, but there's a lot that'll just be stoic and just shut off, unfortunately.
It sort of loops back one to the other, doesn't it? You need to get them to talk, so you need to get them feeling comfortable, so you need to get them out doing something he enjoys, or get him more involved in a hobby. What can we share together? And sort of one leads to the next.
Yes, it's quite a strategy with you, males. It's like, so the
logical
steps.
Logical creatures.
Yes, I think there'll be a lot of women re-listening to this to go, what was that point again? So it is. So it is getting them to take them away from something, to take them away to something that's totally separate from what's going on, something enjoyable that they want to do, and getting them in a relaxed situation to see if they'll open up.
To see if they'll open up, yeah.
Whether that works or not.
Or she could make some money back guarantees on that, but
yeah, well, that's true. Yeah. Yes, it's a delicate matter, isn't it, in that way, trying to get them to open up. Do you see that younger men are becoming more open to talking about things?
I actually find it's a bit of a catch-22 with younger men, as they feel like they're talking about their feelings more, but in some ways I feel like they're more stubborn than ever. Obviously, most of the time we're like, it's everybody else's fault, and if you talk about it long enough, you'd be like, okay, that was my fault. So young guys are like, I'm talking about my feelings. I feel this, I feel that. It's like, well, what are you going to change? Nothing. So what's the about your feelings then? Like, so I'm not sure it's any easier for the younger ones, put it that way. It's just different.
It's just different, yeah. Yeah, so it's all about, really, no matter whether you're male or female, it's having a good sense of self and a value of self, so there's less reactiveness to whatever's going on with your partner, I guess. And that takes commitment and to yourself, and to persevere with that, to keep going and not stop. So when you're more calm, the other person hopefully can be more calm and not reactive. So there is more potential for communication, because it really comes back to just the communication. With all the other things, it is the communication.
Yeah, and it's a good place to start, isn't it, when you're communicating? The funny thing about fight or flight response. So when you're stressed and your physiology changes, it's the only way to ensure someone won't hear you is to yell at them.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, you yell at a person, their adrenaline spikes, the body goes into fight or flight response, your hearing literally shuts down and your field of vision narrows because your body is going, I need to run for my life. All your higher cognitive functioning shuts down, digestive shuts down, or your muscles get flooded with sugars, so you can literally run for your life. So once you've yelled at someone and created that physiological response, they can't hear you anymore.
Yes, I would agree with that totally. Yeah. Yeah, so definitely yelling's not the go. I mean, if you are feeling anger and frustration, when we're taught that anger is a bad thing, look, not everyone, it's not necessarily, it's how you can disperse that in a safe way. If you need to go and do a punching bag, or, I've used a tennis racket on the bed myself, like my preferred method, or even kick something that won't hurt you or it, like something soft. You need to get that out, then can go and talk to someone.
Absolutely. Anger is not a negative emotion. I'm a firm believer that there are no good and bad emotions. There's no morality in emotions. There is just healthy and unhealthy expression and processing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've done my best housework when I've been angry. Got it done. Like, that's a good way of processing. I've used that energy and directed it to clean. Yeah. That could be someone's thing. There's many different ways. So yes, it's finding a way. I mean, if you're so angry you can't speak, and that often happens, or you want to explode, it's like walk away and go and do something. Yeah, chop wood or whatever it takes to process that anger. Male or female, throwing things probably isn't a good thing unless you've got a sport to throw at something. There's so many different ways to process anger, but anger, can be a thing that puts a huge barrier between people because it brings up fear, obviously, and it just disintegrates communication in that way. Constant anger about talking about anything, and unfortunately walking around on eggshells doesn't create a good relationship. It's
an awful place to be. Yeah.
So, there's so many factors and things that happen in relationships. It's just finding a positive way to process things, so you can get clear in yourself too, what you may feel, all these feelings, anger or sadness, whatever, but you may not be clear why. It's like walking away to understand that, or go and talk to someone, as you've said, and come back to communicate what is.
There's the tried and tested method of just writing down everything you want to say or scream at a person. Just write it all down. And then when you get to the end of that list and it's all out and you read it over, you'll probably be like, I actually don't want to say any of these things to my partner now, but I'm glad I said them. Got them out.
Yes. Yes. That can save a lot. And, so many people regret what they may say in anger, and destroy something, say something that shouldn't be said, didn't need to be said. So again, yes, doing that is a very positive thing. So there are so many ways to do things, and there's no right or wrong way as such as how you get to a certain point. I guess it's all in your imagination, your creativity in that way. How creative you can be.
The very last thing
I'll say. Sorry, go on.
The very last thing I'll say on stages of relationships, because it's something that happens right at the end of a man's life, is there something he needs to be happy that he is denying himself that I can reasonably do. A lot of guys get to retirement, they stop working and they just drop dead. And they probably had no idea how much their job, without even meaning to, became all of how their self-esteem was, their whole significance, their whole reason for being. What can you get into? Are there other hobbies that you can help them do? Are there other things, other causes you can get passionate about? Other people you can help? Yeah. Purpose is, and doing and achieving is so intrinsic to a male's mental health and mental well-being. And guys can get very lax on their own self-care. I think this is part of why we need good women to look after us. And we do. Sorry, good women, good men, good partners, in whatever shape that takes.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. You know, you're only giving up work. You're not giving up on life. So we all need a purpose here, no matter who we are. Women need, I mean, women generally tend to be okay, but men, yes, they do suffer with that. So it's so important you're a human being. You're just playing a role this life, and many roles. So it's working out what your next role want to be to give you purpose to still want to be here, because you're important. We're all important in that way. So yeah, that is a big message, and certainly with you know, coronavirus, people may have lost jobs and so forth. Not just retirees. It's finding purpose that you could see it as an opportunity, maybe to change a direction or rethink. You know, many different things. So it's taking the time to do that for yourself, and yeah, anything's possible.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, we're nearly finished. It's gone so quickly. And I mean, there's so much you could talk about. You could keep going on this for so long, I know.
Probably, yeah.
On and on and on, and many facets to it. And we certainly haven't covered everything. But there's some points there we hope that people out there might find interesting or helpful in some way. So, yeah, I really want to thank you today, Phil. It's been lots of fun and enlightening.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it. So thank you, everyone. And as I said, Philip's website is roguetherapies.com. That's correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so you can find Philip there. And yeah, any questions, we'll have a look and we'll answer them on the Angel Heart Radio page. So thank you again to everyone, and I hope you enjoy it. And you'll actually see me Monday on my show at 12 p.m. We'll be interviewing a lovely young author who is, yeah, fascinating story. So I'll see you then. So thank you again, and bye for now.